You've lived it. Hitting the wall, losing yourself, or even taking a break or a vacation doesn't fix the exhaustion. You come back still feeling spent, still stuck in the same grind. You can be one of the strongest people on your team and still not see the cracks forming until you break. I learned this the hard way, but through my own setbacks, I figured out how to sustain my highest performance, not just for a few weeks, but over the long haul, without sliding into burnout. The key? Knowing when to recover, when to build capacity, and how to protect the state where we perform at our best. Today I'm going to share the 3 strategies that completely changed how I lead, work, and live. I'm Ashan Correa. I'm the founder of The Strong Link. I've drawn on over 2 decades of experience serving in the Army as a reconnaissance leader, working in aviation and aerospace, leading test flight operations, mentoring executive leaders, and building my own businesses to bring together the best voices and lessons from those who step up when it matters most. The people I call the strong links, the ones who carry the mission, the team, the win. My roadmap into these 3 strategies really started the first time I entered aerospace at Bombardier. Back then, it was a dream job, working on beautiful legacy business jets. But my approach to leadership was straight out of the military playbook, where you look to meet challenges head on, react fast, and grind through no matter the cost. I really had zero appreciation for recovery, for understanding my own capacity, or for spotting burnout before it hit. Managing 2 aircraft teams, let's say, felt like a heavy stretch. 3 was just overwhelming. I wasn't ready for what really came next when I started to face complex technical challenges, shifting leadership agendas, or the looming threats of layoffs. When the first round of layoffs came, it just broke me. I was already running on fumes, and that final blow was where I hit that wall hard, and that forced a full reset. What happened next really changed everything for me. I returned to the Army into high-performance reconnaissance teams. These teams operated in austere environments, often completely on their own. We were the eyes and the ears for battalion-level commanders. The work was incredibly demanding, physically, mentally, emotionally. I had to learn precision, foresight, and self-reliance at an entirely new level. I went on to complete the advanced reconnaissance training, led patrols, and eventually took my warrant officer's course. By the time I returned to Bombardier for my second stint, this time on the brand new Global 7500 jet, I was a different leader. I went from managing 2 or 3 aircraft to leading 7 simultaneously. The problems I faced were bigger, more complex, but I could solve in hours what used to take me days. I was trusted at the most critical point in the build, testing, flight testing, and certification. I was tapped for the high talent leadership pipeline, and most importantly, I could sustain that pace without breaking. That shift from struggling to sustaining really came down to these 3 strategies. First was building my scaffolding for high-performance sustainment. The second was my go-to recovery practices and defining those well. And the third was deliberately building adaptive capacity. The first strategy is what I call scaffolding. It's a term that actually one of our upcoming speakers, Shannon, who is one of the pioneering women Apache helicopter pilots, also uses. And what we're talking about here is sustaining your best performance, what I like to call the state of resonance. It's about more than just those peak days when everything is just clicking just right. It's about really knowing exactly what supports you so you can stay in that state for as long as possible. I like to use this framework, and it's a resilience triangle with 4 different levels. The first, that foundation, is physical resilience. When we look at fitness, nutrition, and sleep, without it, everything else really starts to wobble. That builds the conditions for that second stage when we're looking at mental resilience, where you're looking at clear thinking, focus, and adaptability. Chris Irvine, another one of our upcoming guests, who was a former Navy SEAL commander, likes to look at it from the lens of mental fitness, where you're training your mind much like you would a muscle. That third stage is emotional resilience, where we look at regulating emotions, reading situations, and sustaining relationships under strain. And finally, that fourth section, where spiritual or purpose has alignment, keeping your why front and center, especially when that grind starts setting in. For some people, scaffolding might be a daily workout, a meditative practice, yoga, or a morning routine. For others, it's regular social connection, or perhaps it's time in nature. Brian, a U.S. Army Ranger and Green Beret, and another upcoming guest, likes to practice selective focus, where he's able to leave work and be fully present at home as a father and a husband. Your scaffolding is personal, but here's the key. You have to protect it. Threats like avoidance behaviors, quick fix coping mechanisms, or neglecting core habits will quietly start to erode it. And that's really when the decline starts. The real challenge, define your scaffolding and name your biggest threats. Protect it like you would an operating system, because that's really what it is. If you're enjoying this episode and finding value in strengthening yourself as a strong link, it would mean a lot if you'd take a second to subscribe. It helps us keep doing this work, bringing together the voices and the tools to strengthen you as strong links. Thank you. Now let's get back to the episode. The second strategy is about recovery. And it starts really with knowing when burnout is actually setting in. This is one of the biggest challenges I've seen working with leaders, mentoring senior executives, or even really from my own story. One of the best tools I've found is the mental health continuum. It's actually shared by one of our upcoming guests, Dr. Stephanie Smith, who's a physician within the armed forces. It's a really simple self-check with 4 zones. There's green, to know you're in a healthy state; yellow, where you might be experiencing some mild stress; orange, where you're experiencing more high-risk stress; and red, where you're under significant distress. By asking yourself which one of these symptoms are you experiencing or where the majority land, it lets you recognize, I'm not in the green anymore. I need to act. And that's one of the most powerful insights you can do to enable recovery. Once you have that awareness, recovery means having clearly defined go-to tools. For some, that's exercise, but intense workouts in a high-stress state can actually make things worse. For others, it's a walk, quiet reflection, maybe talking to someone that you really trust. Physiological resets like cold plunges, saunas, or thermal baths can be used to physically switch your body into recovery mode, into that parasympathetic nervous state. Recovery can also mean managing chronic pain or ongoing stressors daily. I really learned this while dealing with a shifted nerve cluster in my spine from my Army years. Ignoring it made everything harder. Addressing it was just a non-negotiable for me. The takeaway: identify the signs early and have your recovery plan ready. Deploy it before the slide into burnout becomes a free fall. Our third strategy is adaptive capacity. That's your ability to really meet the unexpected challenges without overriding our recovery ability and then sliding into decline. The key that I've really found resonate, whether it's our mentored leaders on our senior executive programs or the leaders we take on our Ascend program and they're working to summit their first mountain peaks, the real key here is driving the conscious into the unconscious. This is where making the habits and routines that sustain you, we make them automatic. When they're second nature, they no longer drain your mental energy. Now, this could be a workout schedule, a morning routine, or consistent meditation. At work, could mean delegating or automating or setting process confirmation so things run without that constant oversight. For me, one of the biggest capacity builders has been intent execution. Understanding that bigger mission, the intent, the why, and working towards that end state where I can craft my own plan, deploy my own skills, my own talents, so I can act without waiting for step-by-step instructions. That autonomy and reliance helps build confidence, reduce friction, and frees up my mental bandwidth to handle the unexpected challenges or disruptions that can occur. So it's a measure to regain some of that capacity as well. When your sustainment habits and recovery tools are baked into your day, the unconscious or automatic, you have the reserves to absorb shocks and still stay in that high performance state. I'd love to hear from you. What's your scaffolding? What are your go-to recovery approaches? How do you build adaptive capacity? Share in the comments so we can learn from each other and strengthen together as strong links. We do this not just to elevate our teams, but to really show up at our absolute best for the people who matter most. And in upcoming episodes, we're going to dive deeper into these strategies with guests who have lived them firsthand, like Brian, Shannon, Chris, and Dr. Smith. So you can hear firsthand how they actually applied them. Until then, take care of yourself, strengthen actively, and I'll see you on the next one.